Wealth, power, influence. J.P. Morgan had it all. He founded the first billion-dollar company, controlled the nation's most profitable industries, and at times the entire U.S. economy hung on his decisions. With a word or the stroke of a pen, he could rescue a company from collapse, or doom it to bankruptcy. He was admired by some, feared by others. There will never be another quite like him. This is the story of John Pierpont Morgan. Born in Connecticut in 1837 into an elite family, John's father, Junius Spencer Morgan, was already a successful banker. Determined for his son to follow in his footsteps, Junius ensured that John received the best education money could buy. But despite his privilege, John's early years were marred by poor health. He suffered from chronic illnesses, severe coughing fits, migraines, seizures, and even scarlet fever. His fragile condition meant he spent most of his time indoors, immersed in books and financial papers, rather than playing with other children. At one point, after being debilitated by rheumatic fever, his father sent him alone to the Azores in the middle of the Atlantic, believing the ocean air would help him recover. He lived there for nearly a year, isolated, until he was well enough to continue his education. By 1857, he had studied in Boston, Switzerland, and Germany, and was ready, at 19, to join the workforce. Thanks to his father's position as a junior partner at London-based George Peabody and Company, John landed a job on Wall Street, working for the firm's American affiliate. Part of his role was to report on the financial and political state of the country, then still an emerging market. Despite John's promise, his father doubted his temperament. He worried John was too impulsive to become a responsible financier. That fear seemed justified in 1859, when John used company funds to purchase an entire shipment of Brazilian coffee that had arrived in port with no buyer. Though the gamble paid off, the firm's leadership was furious over the risk he took. So in 1861, at age 24, John left the security of the firm to start his own business, still acting as an agent for his father's bank in England. That same year, he married his first love, Amelia Sturgis. For a brief time, he was truly happy, but the happiness didn't last. Amelia contracted tuberculosis, and just 4 months after their wedding, she passed away. John, devastated, never truly recovered. As the Civil War broke out, John avoided military service by paying $300 for a substitute, a legal but controversial loophole. Still, he found other ways to involve himself, most notably through profit. He helped finance a consortium that bought 5,000 surplus rifles from the government for $3.50 apiece, only to resell them back to the government for $22 each after minor adjustments. The public saw it as war profiteering, but for John, it was simply business. In 1871, Morgan partnered with renowned banker Anthony Drexel to create Drexel Morgan & Company, later rebranded as J.P. Morgan & Company, the foundation of what would eventually become J.P. Morgan Chase. At first, Morgan mainly connected investors and entrepreneurs, earning commissions. But as his fortune and reputation grew, he began financing entire ventures himself. His first major target? Railroads. Unlike other industries dominated by single moguls, Carnegie in steel, Rockefeller in oil, railroads were fragmented, chaotic, and fiercely competitive. Morgan saw an opportunity: consolidation. He began buying and merging smaller lines, streamlining operations, and eliminating redundancy. This strategy, later dubbed Morganization, turned once-fractured systems into powerful monopolies. And he demanded control. When a railroad needed help, Morgan would only assist if he was given authority to reorganize it. Over time, he controlled a third of all U.S. railways, reshaping the industry and attracting huge foreign investments. He made record-breaking deals, like purchasing 250,000 shares of New York Central Railroad from William Vanderbilt, and underwriting $40 million in bonds for the Northern Pacific Railroad. At a time when railroads made up 60% of the stock market, Morgan's influence was colossal. Despite his business acumen, Morgan's physical appearance made him an imposing figure. He suffered from rosacea and rhinophyma, which left his nose swollen and disfigured. He was so self-conscious that he ordered portrait artists to retouch his features, which is why photos rarely show the full extent of his condition. Combined with his towering presence and blunt style, Morgan was an intimidating force. But in 1901, he faced a new kind of opposition: President Theodore Roosevelt. After forming a massive railroad holding company, the Northern Securities Corporation, Morgan drew Roosevelt's ire. The president, determined to enforce antitrust laws, sued to break up the company. Morgan lost, and tensions between the two men only grew. Upon hearing Roosevelt was heading to Africa, Morgan reportedly quipped, "Good, I hope the first lion he meets does his duty." That same year, Carnegie decided to retire. He offered to sell his steel empire for $480 million, an unprecedented amount. Morgan didn't hesitate. He agreed on the spot, and later admitted he would have paid even more. Morgan merged Carnegie Steel with several other firms to create U.S. Steel, the world's first billion-dollar corporation, worth $1.4 billion. It controlled 2/3 of American steel output, just as Morgan already dominated the railroads. He didn't stop there. He financed Thomas Edison, helped create General Electric, and played a key role in the early telecom industry through what became AT&T. But Morgan's power would be tested during economic panic. In 1893, a financial depression gutted the U.S. economy. Stocks collapsed, banks failed, unemployment soared, and gold reserves dwindled to dangerous levels. The U.S. was on the verge of defaulting. There was no central bank, so President Grover Cleveland turned to Morgan. Acting quickly, Morgan formed a syndicate of top financiers and foreign backers to buy $65 million in U.S. bonds, paying in gold. In just 22 minutes, the deal was done. Confidence was restored and the economy stabilized. All thanks to Morgan. He profited handsomely, of course, but the country was saved. In 1907, another financial panic struck. Banks teetered on collapse. People lined up to withdraw their savings. President Roosevelt, despite disliking Morgan, called on him once again. At 70 and ill, Morgan brought together top bankers, locked them in his library, and refused to let them leave until they agreed on a rescue plan. The plan worked. Capital flowed, panic eased, and disaster was averted. But the public was growing wary. Should one man have this much control over the nation's economy? In 1912, Morgan was summoned before the Pujo Committee to investigate the money trust controlling Wall Street. Morgan, now older and exhausted, became the face of corporate power in America. Ironically, he had planned to sail on the Titanic's maiden voyage in 1912, but canceled due to health issues. He never saw the outcome of the investigation. On March 31, 1913, John Pierpont Morgan died in Rome at age 75. His son continued the family empire, expanding its reach. Over the decades, the bank merged with others, most notably in 2000 with Chase Manhattan, forming J.P. Morgan Chase, now the world's most valuable bank by market cap, with over $3 trillion in assets. While debate continues about whether J.P. Morgan was a patriot or a profiteer, one thing is clear: his legacy shaped the financial world we live in today.